My dad shows me how he passed away, or at least I think it's him. You know, I've always been a daddy's girl. Growing up, my mom wasn't around much, so it was mostly just me and my dad in this big old house. It had 3 rooms upstairs, 2 downstairs, and 2 living areas. It felt like there was always enough space for everyone, and yet sometimes, it felt like there was too much space, like something was missing. Now, let me tell you a bit about my dad. He had a tough life growing up. When he was just 2 years old, his mom and sister died in a plane crash. They were coming back from a trip, and the plane never made it to the runway. He was at home with his dad when it happened. I was actually named after his sister, but with the first letter of our names changed. One fall evening, I was upstairs watching some late-night teen drama. You know, the kind that only aired at night, for all us 2000s kids. After a while, I went downstairs to see if my dad was home and to ask if I could sleep in his room for the night. But as I was heading down the hall, I saw something, a shadowy figure. Tall, slender, and dark, it looked like a shadow, us standing there. It wasn't the first time I'd seen one of these figures. I'd seen quite a few over the years, and I'm not even 20 yet. My heart sank, and my stomach tightened up. I could hear it making this eerie swooshing sound. These figures were more common than you'd think in our town. We had our share of dramatic events, you know. I finally managed to move and ran downstairs, almost tripping over my own feet. I ran into my dad's room, turned on the light, and shut the door behind me. I took a few deep breaths to calm down. But my dad wasn't there. He was out again. As I sighed, I noticed this huge garbage bag behind his door. It looked like he had forgotten to take it out. I got curious and kicked it. It sounded like it was full of bottles, and sure enough, it was vodka bottles. The bag was huge, almost as tall as a doorknob. That hurt me a lot. Looking back now, it all makes more sense than ever. A few months passed, and it was December 21st, 2014. A lot had changed. I had moved back in with my mom, who had gotten better, and I was pretty happy. But then I went to see my dad. Before I left, my mom asked me to get some money from him for groceries. "Hey Dad, do you have money? I want to buy some food and snacks," she told me to ask. I thought it was strange, like maybe she wanted the money for something else. When I asked my dad, he was drunk and said, "Why? Did your mom ask you to ask for money for herself?" He sounded so annoyed. I got upset and ran out. I was just a kid, about 8 or 9, and I just wanted to spend time with him. He followed me in his van, the one they had won in a bingo game long before all this happened. That van was part of why my parents split up. They had been best friends growing up, doing everything together, even having me. But they fought a lot, both mentally and physically. As he followed me, he begged for my forgiveness, but I kept walking. He then promised to buy me at least $200, $400 worth of food and snacks if we went together, without giving my mom the money. I agreed quickly. He even let me pick out an early Christmas gift. Little did I know, it would be my last one from him. After our shopping spree and the long drive on the snow-covered dirt roads, we headed back home. On the way, I asked if I could sleep over that night, and he said yes. I was so excited. He took me to my mom's with my groceries and toy, then left. I waited and waited for him to come back and pick me up. It felt like days, maybe even weeks. I had my bag packed and everything, but it was getting late, and I eventually fell asleep. That's when the nightmare began. In the dream, I was in my dad's room, almost like I was him. I stumbled around, holding a bottle. As I fell into the closet, something put a rope around my neck. I tried to pull it off, but as I fell further, I couldn't get up. The thing that had put the rope on me was a ghost-like figure. It had pale blue skin, eyes that bulged out of their sockets, and long, rotting teeth. Its hands and feet were like extra long fingers with long nails. As the life left my dad, so did the nightmare. I woke up to my mom crying, sitting on my bed. There were people in my room, making sure we were okay. I asked her what was wrong, even though I already knew. "It's your dad. He's gone," she said through her tears. I think I was in shock, just like her. It's been 10 years since that night, and every year, the same nightmare haunts me. Every December 21st, I relive it. I see that thing that did it. I believe my dad is still wandering around, not realizing he's gone. In my culture, it's not good for a spirit to wander. So, the moral of my story is, be careful with your actions. What happened to my dad could happen to anyone, just like it almost happened to me. When I was about 7, my parents separated. My mom moved us from Texas to Oregon, me and my 4 siblings, while my dad went off to Florida. After a few months of staying with my aunt, we finally found a place to rent. It was a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with this huge backyard that had a rope swing. It was a pretty nice little house, although it was a bit old. You'd walk in, and there'd be a living room that flowed into a dining room, which then led to a kitchen. Behind the living room, there was a hallway. About 4 feet down the hallway, there was a basement where my 2 older brothers lived. At the end of the hallway was my mom's room, and to the right of that were 2 rooms across from each other. One was mine, which I shared with my younger brother, and the other was my 4-year-old sister's room. Well, about a year into living there, we got a dog named Max, a mini golden doodle. One night, when Max was about 6 months old, I must have been around 9. It was around 3:30 in the morning. I was dead asleep on the top bunk of our bunk bed with my brother below, and Max was sleeping with me. Out of nowhere, Max and I woke up at the same time. My door had been violently slammed open, and all I could see was blackness. My heart jumped into my throat as I stared into the hallway. I finally gathered enough courage to get down and see what was going on. My younger brother was still dead asleep, completely unaware. I looked down the hall, and it was completely silent. Nobody seemed to be awake. Naturally, I thought maybe my older brothers were playing a prank on me. But then it hit me. Why would they be up so late on a school night? So, I peeked into the basement, but there was nothing but snoring and darkness. By now, I was scared out of my mind. I peeked into the kitchen from the laundry room, where the hallway connected to the kitchen. From there, I could see the oven, a bar, the sink, and the dining room, which had a window and a sliding glass door that was wide open, leading to our backyard. From the window, which looked out into our driveway, I saw a man dressed in black, kind of hurrying away. There was a gate between our backyard and the driveway, so I guessed he must have hopped it because I didn't hear any loud metallic noises. My heart sank. I ran to my mom, sobbing and trying to explain what had happened. She looked around and saw muddy footprints in our kitchen that led to more footprints on our hallway carpet, all the way to my room. I still have no idea what that man intended to do, but we stayed in that house for another 4 years and never had another encounter like that again. It still makes me wonder to this day, what made him run away, and why. Have you ever heard of the game Bloody Mary? When I was young, every Christmas Eve, my mom would take my sister and me to my grandma's house to bake brownies and bread. One year, I was about 7, and my cousin and sister were 6 when we went to our grandma's house as usual. After baking, my cousin, sister, and I decided to go outside and play. Our uncle lived next door, and he had a shed with a horse in it. We went to see the horse, chatting about school stories as we fed it. That's when my cousin brought up a new game they'd been playing at school, Bloody Mary. I'd heard of the game, but hadn't had any luck when I played it with my friends. She told us all these stories about kids at her school who played it. My sister believed her, but I didn't. She was always known for exaggerating or stretching the truth. We went home a few hours later, and I didn't think much more about Bloody Mary. that changed on Christmas morning when we returned to my grandma's. We always went there for dinner and presents. After dinner, while we were watching a scary movie, my cousin dared me to go upstairs. We weren't supposed to go up together, only one at a time, but my grandma seemed distracted, so I took the chance. We rushed upstairs to find my sister waiting in the bathroom. I asked what was going on, and she said we were going to try Bloody Mary. I didn't really want to, because I knew nothing would happen, but I decided to prove to them that there was no such thing. We closed the bathroom door and turned off the light. In my grandma's bathroom, there's a small mirror above the sink and a huge mirror on the opposite wall. Apparently, two mirrors facing each other like that open a portal to the dead. We obviously didn't know this at the time. My grandma's house is very old and has been in our family for years. The three of us stood in a line and faced the mirror. We counted to 3 and chanted Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. We stood there, staring into the mirror, waiting for something to happen. I knew nothing would, but I hoped something might. I stared really hard, not blinking, and that's when I saw it, blood-red eyes staring right back at me. I nudged my sister and cousin, asking if they could see anything. They just nodded. The eyes grew bigger, and eventually, the three of us ran out of the bathroom screaming and crying. It's been 8 years, and we've never spoken about that night since. I'm not sure what my sister and cousin saw, but I'll never forget those blood-red eyes.